fondness for Albright College. Growing up 2 blocks away, actually, my first college course that I took was at Albright, and then teaching over the last few years, a number of years, which I won't say how many, teaching a number of times, and it's been a pleasure. So it's great to be back, and I could not be more over the moon about tonight's guest and about the interview. I think I can talk for, in this case, for my faculty colleagues who might be listening and who knew Paul or have other alum like this. There is nothing more exciting, fulfilling, invigorating when our students do well and our students do good. And in this case, you're about to meet or re-meet a gentleman who does both. He's really done well for himself, but he really does good for not only his family and the community, but for the community and our society at large. So I'm going to read this. Usually we don't read a long bio introduction, but I got to tell you, you got to hear this stuff. This is awesome. So Paul J. Sinclair is a general manager, executive vice president of Atlantic Records, based at the company's New York headquarters. And before that, he was in Label's widely respected EVP of digital strategy and innovation, which, as we all know, has really been crucial in the last decade in its evolution and growth. And Paul's been that driving force behind the creation of the industry's premier digital department, which has become a pioneer in digital innovation while developing unique, bespoke campaigns for artists on the Atlantic roster. In his current post, Paul's focuses on strategy to keep Atlantic at the forefront of modern culture, bringing his extensive marketing and creative experience to a wide scope of company initiatives, leading pop and rock marketing, creative services, content development, tour marketing, and artist development, and still has time for his old alma mater. It's amazing. Sinclair was named Billboard's Digital Power Players in 2016 and 17. He's a frequent speaker at media and music forums, recently been a panelist or guest lecturer about innovation here at Albright, William Patterson University, Columbia, NYU, the Drucker School of Management, hoping to inspire future leaders. He came to Atlantic with a deep and diverse background in various industries, from leading project management at a web development startup to holding various roles in software companies, working for U.S. Defense. And then he joined Warner Music Group in 2001 as Director of Digital Priorities. Paul moved to WMG's Atlantic Records in 2005, spearheading the company's commitment to emerging technologies and digital innovation. He holds a Master's of Info Science from Penn State. That's okay, you're allowed. He's got his undergrad from degree of business from Albright College. Paul, it is so great to have you. Welcome.
Hello, I was going to say thank you for agreeing to do this, old friend, and then I decided along the way that I would change it to my recently graduated long-term friend. So, thank you for
thanks, Paul. So we got so much to talk about, and we're going to do it, and we're going to show some pictures, and we're going to talk about some stories. But I think what really let's go back to the beginning, not like when you were born beginning, but like pretty close, because I actually happened to get to know Paul through his mother, who I had a business meeting with, and they were involved with the fraternity here at Albright while I was teaching, and Paul wound up becoming one of my interns, right? We won't say how long ago. So help everybody else who might not know, talk about this journey on the road to becoming a record label exec.
So hi everyone, thanks for joining. Excited to be here. Love Albright. Go back as often as I can. And as Santos said, we've been very dear friends for a very long time. So I grew up outside of Philadelphia, as a lot of Albright students and grads have. Anything related to the music industry was foreign to me, other than that at one point I worked for a friend's company carrying crates of vinyl as they DJ'd weddings and parties and local events. And then my only other musical experiences that are worth noting are that I was in the church choir for a while, probably pre-puberty, I'm sure. And when I wanted to learn an instrument, my mother, because we didn't have space for a piano, my mother bought a church organ. And so I learned how to play the organ, which I don't know if you knew that, Santo, but my first musical instrument was an organ. And then And then at some point post college, and then we'll go back, I took guitar lessons at the world famous guitar bar in Hoboken. I was terrible, and that was the end of my opportunity to join a band. So going back, I ended up at Albright like many people do. I just visited the campus and loved it, and just knew that it was home. And a few years later, I'm still not exactly sure what it was. It just felt like the place that I needed to be, an overnight and a visit. At Albright, I started in the Alpha program, which is, for those that don't know, is the undecided program. It's a nice name and a program for people that have no idea what they're going to do with their lives. My advisor, my freshman year for that program, is still a friend who I'm friends with on Facebook, and we actually banter back and forth about politics and all kinds of other things. Professor Al Casacedo, who I actually think just retired from Albright last year. So the Alpha program was instrumental in me going through I'm going to major in philosophy. I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to major in political science. I'm going to major, I remember my mother saying, you can't work if you major in philosophy. So that was that. I was going to major in accounting, economics, finance. Actually, I think Professor Sabori's on the line. Thank you for joining. He taught me quant and was one of my favorite business professors. Actually got me interested in going down the path of economics, but ultimately ended up in management. And so I lucked out in that. Through that, I met Santo, interned at Leadership Perks, this phenomenal program in Reading that trains future board members for nonprofits. And what else is along the way? So Leadership Perks, I interned at Santo and the intern program, which was 1 year old when I was at Albright, helped me get an internship at UGI Gas Utility, which probably was no college kid's dream job, but it paid me to work there, which was phenomenal. So I worked there for a few years. I learned software. I learned how to do management consulting with Santo. And when I graduated from school, it helped me to get a job in the beginning of the boom of technology. So, should I keep going?
No, it's absolutely, you can continue. But one of the things that strikes me while you're talking is how vivid this is. It sounds like this is a really important part of your life that really contributed a lot to where you are now. And I think that's really important for people who are watching and who may watch to understand that this 4 year, in most cases 4 year experience, is like the building blocks. I mean, your academic experience, but also other experiences really help you become a leader.
I think often, so I've been out of Albright for 25 years, I think this year, and I think, maybe not daily, but weekly, about how many opportunities that I got from Albright, again, from meeting you to the internship program that was new and shiny and looking for students to lean in, to the closeness that I had with professors. I wonder often, and then of course, all of my fraternity brothers and all the clubs that I was in, and I wonder all the time if I would have had the same opportunities at another school. And I'm sure people have those opportunities at many other schools, but I really do count myself genuinely lucky. I was just talking with a former classmate over Facebook last night about this, and we both said, like, we were so lucky to have found each other, as a class and as a group of people. So I can't express, like, Albright was transformative for me. And awesome. I think it was a bit of luck because I stumbled into it, but also, you then have to lean in and do something with it.
Right. And you certainly did invest yourself in that. So tell us a little bit I'm curious about the folk songs course and why it was a light bulb moment.
So my senior year, I still hadn't taken an English lit class, and my second semester senior year, I saw this course listed called folk songs, and I thought, well, that sounds fun, right? And it was with Professor John Adams, Michael Adams. John Adams was the founding father, and so Michael Adams taught the course, and it was mostly seniors. Right, in spite of the fact that it's an English lit class that you were probably supposed to take 3 years ago, and the two interesting things were, one, the senior project was either you could write an incredibly, 50-page paper breaking apart, something, or you could perform. And so, the entire senior class in this lit class performed for an Albright Experience event because it was the way to get yourself an A. So, that one thing I learned was like, well, that was interesting, and I hate performing, but like getting an A was definitely worth it. An A for just that presentation. And then the other light bulb moment was I took this class because I thought it was an interesting way to learn and dissect music, but like, that was it. It wasn't any deeper than that. It seemed like a fun class. And for about 5 years, I spent time, whenever I had time post college, like going through folk music and learning different kinds of folk music and Irish music and Scottish. It was just like I was fascinated not by folk music. I was just fascinated by the genealogy and like the lyrics and like how music comes to be. So anyway, that class was a thing that I've carried with me for a long time. And then fast forward to my interview at Atlantic Records when I was at Warner Music Group, and interview, the general manager at the time asked me to talk about like things that I love and music that engages me. And I talked about that class, and we probably spent 20 minutes talking about that class and its relationship to music and the history of music, which I'm 100% convinced helped me get this job. So Michael Adams, I owe you a little bit of thanks for my career.
Great story. You're probably one of the least starstruck persons I know, but you have interfaced and connected with so many really cool people in the industry, and I'm sure people would really like to know. Let's start, like, who was the first famous musician or songwriter, singer-songwriter that you connected with, and I think you had a story about that.
Yeah, so in my first week at Warner Music Group, I bumped into two celebrities that I never thought I'd meet my whole life. One was I was walking down the hallway. When I started at Warner Music Group, I worked for the chief information officer, so in IT, and I had a great job, but I worked in IT. I was walking down the hallway, and this gentleman with long hair in a band came up to me, and he said, "Excuse me, mate, can you show me where we'll say the men's room?" He didn't say the men's room. "Can you show me where the men's room is?" And I said, "Sure, Mr. Plant. I can definitely show you where the men's room is." I walked Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin down to the bathroom, and we got to the door, and he said, he literally turned around and looked at me. He said, "I could take it from here, mate." And I was definitely walking him into the men's room. So that was my Robert Plant.
Did you wait for him outside?
Yeah, I definitely moved on. I got away from the door and was like, I can't be creepy. And then in the same week, I flew out to LA, and I was walking down the hall, and someone said, "Do you want to go to a show?" And I said, "Absolutely, I want to go to a show." And we went in, and they said, "Oh, we have passes." We went upstairs, and we were in the up on the balcony, and I was sitting across from a woman for about an hour and a half, and finally the band, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, yells out, "Flea!" And the band says, "Hey, I just want to give a shout out to my mom." And then the woman 2 feet from me stands up and waves, and I realized I've been like shooting the breeze. Yeah, shooting and breeze with Flea's mom all night long, and she was the loveliest, nicest person. So that was my first week in the company, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool. I could do this."
It's great though, but I know, knowing you, I know you've made people feel really comfortable and at ease, and so we're gonna talk. We got some pictures to show a little bit later, but we're gonna talk about some of the other folks. Let's look at the industry. I can imagine. Well, first from a tech point of view, when you started out in IT, but looking back now, how much has it really changed the recording industry? What are the things that really stand out to you as like, wow, I never imagined this, or maybe you did?
My role over the years has shifted, right? My role now, and I'm very lucky to be in a new kind of role where I spend time on the creative side, and I get to work with new artists, and it's very creative, and I love it. And but I really started out on the technology side, but not tech. But I was the guy that they brought in. They said, like, you're going to help us figure out where the world's going and how we were. So I started in 2001 at Warner Music Group. So the beginning of the end of the music industry, peer-to-peer had just come in. And so my role was to help figure out like where Warner Music Group was going to go, how we were going to make money, how we were going to like build technology to use it to like get music to fans.
Let me just interrupt 1 second, because maybe people aren't getting what's peer-to-peer.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Napster is the easiest way to, right? So you could download music for free, And so the music industry went from, we were buying CDs, right? The height of the music industry, to
Right.
music's free everywhere. And while some people were still paying for music, every kid on earth was using the internet to download, terabytes or at least gigabytes of music at the time.
Yeah.
And so, so
they wanted you to help figure out where things were going in
thank you.
01.
So the changes have been, we had to figure out how to deal with peer-to-peer. There were a lot of mistakes along the way. I mean, I'm not taking the blame for any of them because I was pretty young in the industry. A lot of mistakes were made, but a lot of good came. We experimented. I actually got to product manage the first ever mobile streaming service in like 2003, which, I mean, it was crazy. It was like horrible sounding music on a flip phone for, I don't know, $5 a month, and you got like up to 100 songs, or right. It was like, that was all the universe could handle at the time.
Right.
But it was an amazing opportunity to experiment and learn and see what would work and what wouldn't. And then we moved into a world where people were willing to, iTunes changed the game and you could download music. And so the entire industry, including all of the artists, had to think about, how do you sell music digitally and what's going to work, and how, right? The iTunes store now became the only retailer on earth, right? We had physical retail still, and then right, like stores, and then we had Target and Walmart and all those things, and then we had iTunes, and they were the entire music industry. And that lasted from early 2004, I think iTunes launched, until the end of the decade, and then Spotify started coming in. And we all knew that Spotify was going to completely change the world, because it's not just like, instead of downloading, you pay $10 a month, and I say Spotify, but it's now Apple and Amazon and YouTube. And
yeah.
It's fundamentally it's different, because artists get compensated as people listen. So that's dramatically different than It's dramatically different than a world where you buy something and artist gets compensated at that moment. And so artists and labels and managers and everybody had to think, like, how do you find fans? How do you engage fans? How do you keep engaging? Like, the entire idea of how we think about fans had to shift from, we need to get somebody to buy something, to, we need to get, Santo to listen over and over and over and over until he and hopefully we remind him 9 months later when he wants to listen again, to listen over and over, right? Like, it was totally different. So my job along those way was to figure out, like, how do we do those things? Which cool technologies would help us do that? I met Instagram, when there were a couple of people, and I was like, a photo sharing network. People ask me, like, what's the startup you didn't think would work? I'm like, oh, Instagram. Like, I had no idea that people would only want a network just for photos, and because MySpace was the big thing at the time. So my job was to sort through every startup in the world and try to figure out which ones would help grow the business for our artists and the company, and which ones wouldn't change the world.
So, are we better for it?
I love the world we live in. I always wanted to. So the David Bowie quote, and I won't get it right, so I won't try to quote him. But David Bowie a long time ago talked about music like water, and I always thought that, look, there's tons of arguments about the financial nature of how music works and how people get compensated and all that. But I believe at my core that people should be able to listen to music, and the streaming world enables, when you're on your Peloton, you can listen to music. When you're it enables music to exist anywhere you are, right? There are fitness apps, there's streaming apps, there's video sharing. Like, it just enables music to be a part of our lives. And so I think, like, spiritually and culturally, that resonates with me, because I just think music should be a part of our everyday lives. And I think music as a transaction doesn't really enable that.
Yeah. I mean, wow, the accessibility and the ability to share an experience in all the places that you described, it is amazing. It is spiritual. I like that you framed it that way, because it is so much a part of many of our lives that whether we're just humming it or singing it, but it makes us feel alive and connected. That's awesome. That's really exciting. I'm glad, I think a lot of times we see technology as the end, and it's really not. It's a means to something, and you've really very very well articulated that the end here is like a more richer, fuller, engaged life. You know?
So let's go back to Albright for a second.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
because I think that my experience at a liberal arts school where I took all kinds of classes ranging from philosophy to religion to accounting to economic, right, everything.
sure.
Amazing presentation class with Anadora Shirk. Like that experience helped me think about the world broadly instead of majoring in a very specific thing in a very specific kind of college. And so to your point, I don't think it's all enablers for like the life we live rather than a world where we believe that our job is to wake up, go to work, do a thing, go home and say, thank goodness I'm not at work anymore.
Yeah, I love the. I don't know if it's actually a Buddhist attributed to a Buddhist quote, but the notion that life is fulfilling when work and play are blurred, and we really don't know which is which, and that's a gift, and that's part of what you're doing is really enabling us to get a gift. And here's a case where enabling is a good thing, because a lot of times we talk about enabling, we're not talking about good things. Look, this is so exciting. Let's talk a little bit. A couple minutes. We're going to go to some slides, some pics. But I'm curious. You've been in a position now where I bet you're giving a lot of advice to people, or you're mentoring a lot of folks. And I'm excited because I can only imagine how much you care about helping people become their potential. So, bringing it back to Albright, what's some of the best advice you got?
Okay. I have a few things that I want to make sure. I actually wrote this down because I don't want to lose them. So one is from you, and actually the thing you just talked about, I would also count as advice. I learned the love of work, from many people, but you were one of them, because I experienced you loving everything that you did from the nonprofit world to teaching to management consulting, and I mean that genuinely.
I
The
appreciate
other the other thing that I learned from you, which you and I know is an inside joke, is that
it.
you taught me to be communicative, which you then debated with me was not a word, which is one of my favorites. I wish we had Google at the time, because it's clearly a word, which I then printed out and put over top of your computer for probably 10 years of your life.
Yeah.
But like learning how that came from a conversation where I was not being clear, and you really hammered home that I was doing things but not being clear about what was needed and what you needed and what I needed. And so that was a moment for me, because here I am 25 30 years later and I still have it with me. um, then along the way, when I was at Warner Music Group and I was offered the position at Atlantic, I turned it down, which sounds crazy in hindsight, but I turned it down, and I was toiling and debating, and I just couldn't decide because I had a great career at Warner Music Group and I loved what I did,
Mhm.
and it was different. It was global. It was a different kind of job. And a friend of mine, where we were sitting by a restaurant, and he said, I'm listening to everything you're saying, and you keep wanting to go with your head, and you need to go with your heart. And like once in a while, you have to decide to go with your heart. And I'm gonna go with I'm an analyst. I analyze, I overanalyze, as you well know. And so for me, that was a moment of I actually need to listen to this person and go with my gut and go with my heart. And I did, because what I realized years later was that I always think with my head. And so even leading with my heart, I had already analyzed it. I needed to allow myself to just take a leap of faith, right? So that was a moment. Two more quick ones. So someone at UGI, my mentor at UGI, said to me, "Hey, at its core, when you really get going in your career, work for a company where they do what you do." And so when I started at the Warner Music Group, I thought like they don't really do what I do. I'm a technologist, business, right? But what I
Mhm.
realized was actually I was completely wrong. They actually needed exactly what I was. I stumbled into a moment where they needed people just like me. They needed people who loved technology but loved entertainment and culture and content and all these things. And then
Well,
the
and
last,
just real
sorry.
quickly, that it just underscores. we tend to put people in boxes, even in our majors. And I know why we do it, and I get it, and it's important. But the thing about liberal arts education, and I experienced at Albright, of course, and at Moravian, is that you're not forced to stay in a box, and people do value having a broader perspective and a sensitivity to things that are just, oh, he's a marketing major, or oh, he's a, whatever. So thanks for putting that out there. I'm sorry. So you had another one?
Just one more. So the last one was, so our chairman of Atlantic, our CEO or COO said, I don't know, a few years in, she and I were talking, and I said, what advice do you give people? And she said, I added on to it. She said, I think the thing that people coming out of school don't understand is if they really want to be great, they need to be fearless. They need, and in a very polite, lovely way, they need to be fearless. They need to not be afraid to talk in the meeting, not be afraid to put ideas forth. Like, be kind, be polite, don't be annoying, but like, you need to be fearless. She said, I think people are often afraid when they get out of school. And then over the years, I've added on patience and persistence, because I think that people aren't patient. Everyone expects now, and when they don't get now, they're upset. And I believe that most good things take a lot longer than you would like, plus probably time on top of that. And I also think people give up. I think persistent. So fearless, patient, persistent. And that's my the three things. I thought that maybe I should tattoo them somewhere, but I don't have tattoos.
It's your mantra. Listen, we're talking to Lion legend Paul J. Sinclair, and we're talking about his awesome career and his passion for music. We're gonna go to some slides of some photos because they tell some great stories. So let's look at what's up here. Tell us about this montage here.
So you asked me for some if I had any photos of my times here, and I actually don't take lots of photos because I think our focus should be on the artists and not on ourselves. And so I pulled together what I have, which is frankly mostly going to be of my children experiencing my job. But so the upper left is our building, and that's the founder of Atlantic, Ahmet Ertegun, and he was an amazing record man. And actually, I was lucky to work with him. He passed away a year after I started here. The one on the right is them asking me to model a 21 Pilots onesie. I don't think I helped sell a single onesie, but it's a great photo. The bottom left is our recording studio, actually upstairs here, and my daughter in the front. And the woman, Ebony, for those who are interested, the woman in the photo runs a nonprofit, from Atlantic, but she started it called Gender Amplified, and it's for female producers in the music industry. So it's a really cool female-centric producer organization. And then the one on the right is my children hanging out in the studio and trying to learn how to play the drums, and reason my daughter as a penguin. I'm not really sure what that's about.
All right, let's see what the next one is about. Oh, this. I know they got a great story with this one.
So Phil Collins, this is my friend Phil Collins. I like to call him my friend. I'm not sure he would call me his friend, but he did once for a moment. So I was supposed to have 15 minutes with Phil Collins to tell him about the internet for his Motown album. And he came in the office and he canceled all the rest of his meetings. And he said, we're going to hang out for 2 or 3 hours and you're going to teach me everything there is to know about the internet in, I don't know, 2009 or something like that, some year like that. And so I hung out with Phil. That's a photo in the studio. He invited me to his castle in, I think, Scotland. I did not get to go to his castle ever. Actually, never saw him again. But we had a phenomenal couple of hours. And as an In the Air Tonight and Phil Collins Genesis fan, it was quite a moment. And as you said, I'm not really starstruck. Like, this is not a thing that's ever been a thing for me. So this is more of a cherished moment. Like, I loved hanging out with Phil Collins and talking about his music and how we could bring it to his fans in the new era.
Well, and that's exactly what the folks that that you work with need. They need people to just relate to them as who they are and help them, develop their potential and become, the best that they can do. So, yeah, you're really facilitating that. Next slide, please.
Okay, so
I know these people.
A couple of like these are probably the only artist photos I have with me in them. Upper left is Ben Platt from Dear Evan Hansen and also a recording artist. And I only took that photo because my daughter is a huge theater fan and Ben Platt fan. Ben was kind enough. The one on the right is Melanie Martinez, who's amazing in my family. The bottom left is Charlie Puth, who just put out an amazing new song called Light Switch. Check it out. And the one on the right is Tom Green, the comedian, who holding a ventriloquist dummy, who came in because at the time he was writing rap records, and that was, I mean, hanging out with Tom Green and talking about rap music was phenomenal. That was a very long time ago as well.
Yeah. And I know we're gonna pop up some links in a little bit right before we open for questions, which we will be doing soon. So some really fun links that, right, music, podcasts, things like that, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to drop in. There were a couple of, I was thinking about what I could share at the end that people would feel lighthearted instead of here's 3 books in the music industry that you should
Right,
read
right.
a year. So there's a couple of podcasts that I'll talk about one of them at the end. A couple of podcasts that I thought, you know what, when
Okay.
you're hanging out around the house, it'll just it's they're light and they're entertaining and they're fun and they're inside stories, and some are educational and some are funny.
Nice, nice. Ryan, next slide, please. There we go. God, I love this one. Of course, uh, tell us about this experience. This is great.
Friday night, some random Friday night, someone says, "Hey, we've been working on The Greatest Showman for more 2 years or something, and with the film company, we were putting out the soundtrack, and we have a relationship with that crew, Pasek and Paul, and a bunch of people involved with the film, and Hugh Jackman came. I mean, it was an amazing experience to work on the film, and so they said, do you want to go to the premiere? It's in Brooklyn. And I think they asked me like an hour or two, and I said, that'd be cool. And I then
Mhm.
realized that it was on the Queen Mary 2, docked off the coast of Brooklyn, the biggest ship on the Titanic, I won't say Titanic, the Titanic-like ship. And the cast was there, and there were jugglers and flame eaters and sword throwers. And I mean, and we watched the movie, which we all thought like, oh, this will be cool to see. And we have the soundtrack and that'll be really fun. And we all walked out realizing, oh, this thing is going to be a monster. This is going to be a thing that we are all singing for the next 2 years of our lives, which luckily was exactly what happened. I think I saw it with my children and family, 4 times, including the sing-along version and everything else.
Oh my gosh, amazing! And I think it's Keela Settle that there's a YouTube video of them doing the presentation to get greenlit, and it is incredible. She does. They do a version of "This Is Me," and
Yes.
it's just so. Oh my gosh, yeah. So
People haven't seen that, they should Google that because I agree with you. That's a phenomenal
it's
video.
incredible. All right, just show me any Broadway show. You know me, I'll I'll light it right up. All right, and this is Hamilton. Tell us about this is the show in Puerto Rico, yeah?
And so I'm sure everybody knows Hamilton. This is one of the loves of my life at Atlantic Records. I've been very, very fortunate to work on this project. This show was Lin-Manuel Miranda did put on a benefit in Puerto Rico to raise money for the hurricane victims. And so he brought the original cast down to Puerto Rico, and actually a lot of local people as well took over a theater and did, I think, 3 or 4 week run or something like that.
Yeah,
And so
I
I
think
was
so.
lucky enough to fly to Puerto Rico, and with my daughter and my older daughter, and we hung out and spent an entire week in Puerto Rico, just the 2 of us. And again, massive theater kid. And so for her, this was the moment of her life. But most importantly, it was a massive fundraiser. It raised millions of dollars, and it was an incredible experience. And I think in a very tragic time, but also a complicated political time, brought a lot of love to the island that was needed.
And that's what I meant at the beginning about doing good and doing well. This is incredible heart that was put in behind this, and for you folks to, play such an integral role. Awesome, really cool. Next slide, please.
Just a couple of other snapshots. So hanging out with my family. So the VMAs is the first time I ever got to take my older daughter, to a big event. A big event, and the looking all cool in her Beetlejuice looking outfit here. So I'm lucky enough. I don't go to all of these things. Again, I'm not a big like go to big events. Like that's not really my thing. I like going to little clubs and seeing cool little bands that nobody's heard of yet, including me.
Mhm.
Um, every once in a while, going to a big event is a pretty amazing thing. And so anyway, to be able to do it with my family was fun. And the upper right is a new artist, an up and coming artist named Bryn Elliott. She's phenomenal. Went to Harvard, majored in women's studies and philosophy, and is a singer songwriter. Super cool.
Nice, nice, great. Let's. Is that the last one, Raleigh, or is there another one? I think there's. Oh, yeah, there we go. Sold out.
Yeah.
Dressing room?
Dressing room. That's the dressing room at the Bryn Elliott. That's Radio City. You're seeing the Radio City dressing room.
Nice. That's a little pretty well known little music hall, right? All right, thanks, Riley. Thanks for showing us those. We got a couple more questions that we just want to make sure we cover before we open up to questions and some fun conversation. So, okay, so you're here and you're in a great place. Suppose you'd make different choices. What would have been the alter possible career path?
So I happen to have with me in my office, I've had it here for a long time, my senior seminar paper. It's called from Albright. It's called Understanding and Managing Technological Innovations in the 1990s. I mean, it just rolls off the tongue, right? Like it's as interesting as it sounds. I actually absolutely certain that there are quotes in here from like Bill Gates and the Microsoft, peak days and whatnot.
Right.
So I always thought, after my experience with you and at UGI and things like my senior seminar, I thought I would work in management consulting, right? Because I love change. I still have notebooks from Albright where I used to like scribble and doodle like the word change. I was just fascinated with like, how do you deal with innovation and rapid change? And it was the thing that had me always interested. And that's really the technology is not my thread. It's like constant change. And
Hmm.
so I thought that's what I would do. I thought I would work in consulting and I would do lots of different kinds of projects. And maybe I would grow into like organizational consulting or like organizational development or leadership consulting or something over the years. And then I stumbled into this beautiful world of music and I thought I would be here a few years. And
Hmm.
after a few years, I just realized that like this is better than consulting because I get to live on the edge of change, but also do it with some of the most. I mean, my coworkers are amazing, but artists are every artist of every kind. They're some of the most interesting, fascinating, creative, like phenomenal people to work with. Crazy. I mean, all the things are crazy and fascinating and interesting. And so I realized that like this has changed, right? That this was being in the belly of the beast was more interesting than popping in. So that was one path. The other
Hmm.
path that I thought I would take maybe halfway through my career was probably, working at a platform like a YouTube or a Spotify or right, one of the big
Yeah.
um, entertainment platforms. But I love what I do. I count myself lucky every single day to either dial into work or come to work.
And for any students that may be watching, or people that are considering career changes, your passion. This is one of the things I love about what you've done in your career and who you are in your career, because it is about your passion. It's about being connected to what you're doing and having meaningful work, as that the initial quote said. It's I think if there's just one thing that people should take away is look at what you do, look at what you can accomplish when you have and live your passion. And that's what I really think is one of the many amazing things about you in your career.
Well, and whatever you do, right? Like I have friends that are accountants that love what they do, and therefore they're amazing at it and successful. And I
Yeah.
have friends that are teachers who love what they do, right? I think it comes down to like you've just got to figure out what actually makes you excited to work, right? Because work is a huge part of our lives.
Well,
If you're lucky
and
enough, you figure it out.
yeah, and this isn't on our script, but I think I've said this to you before pretty recently. I'm really proud of the things that you've accomplished, but also because of the person that you are, and your family is so important to you. Your kids, your wife, family, and getting them connected to what you're doing and making them a part of that. That's a real, like, work-life balance is not an easy thing. And so kudos for that, because that's so important and people can do it. Look, if the head of an Atlantic record label can do this, everybody, we can all do this. We can all find that balance.
My wife would agree with you that work-life balance is not an easy thing. Um, but I think she would equally agree that that we're all very lucky that I'm happy and we're all happy in what I do get to do every day, right? So
Absolutely.
sometimes you just have to accept that there's less balance sometimes. Sometimes one or the other becomes
Right.
imbalanced, and you accept it. You just
And,
accept it.
and it's not easy. It's really important to hear, but it's doable, and we can find ways to make that work. I just put on the some of the links, so we'll talk. Excuse me, for the podcast, and we'll talk about that in 1 second. But so, what's next at for you at Atlantic? What do you see in the horizon?
Um, let's see. I think for me, I think I get out of bed now thinking about the new artists that we've signed. Like I love meeting new artists, and so
Okay.
that's for me personally, the what's next is all the things to come. I love all the big artists that we've signed. I love Ed Sheeran and I love Bruno Mars and Cardi B and all those things. But I love meeting new artists who are excited and ready to go and ready to take on the world. And it's just fun. Um, and and often they're very open to like sitting in a room and just spitballing ideas and and trying to figure out how they bring their music to fans and whatnot, but creatively and everything else. But I always wonder, again, also sort of came a little bit from you. I don't want to give you too much credit on this in this
Yeah,
conversation.
that's not good.
But I'm lucky enough to talk to students a lot. I every once in a while I get to teach a one-off class somewhere, not a semester, but a class here and
Hmm.
there, and I do panels and whatnot. And I do wonder if some point in time when I have more free time, if I'll actually try to teach a semester here and there, because I love being with students. And I
Hmm.
used to think it was about teaching, and actually now it's about what I get from students, because I sit and especially for what I do, right? I'm in the youth business, right? Most music fans are on the younger side. And
Okay.
so I get as much from talking to students as hopefully they get from me. Hopefully they get something from me.
Hmm.
I love being in a room with students and talking about the world and culture and their opinions on things and what drives them and how they use music and how they use television and all those things.
There is nothing like it for keeping us vital and relevant and connected. I, I completely get it, because being in the classroom, there's really nothing better. So you are teaching. You're teaching a lot. You're just not in a formal class all the time. So let's talk about the podcast, and we have some questions coming up on the chat. So we'll get to those. But what do you want to say about the podcast? Because if the people scroll back, they'll see that there's Waiting for Impact, Rock and Roll High School, and Winds of Change. So which one do you want to talk about?
All right, so I'll mention them all. So Rock and Roll High School, full disclosure, and is an Atlantic podcast. So definitely check it out. It's interviews with some of the most important icons of the music industry, right? Clive Davis and Graham Nash from so amazing people. It's super cool, and you can pick the ones you want to listen to. Winds of Change and Waiting for Impact are more story narratives. Waiting for Impact, the one that I'm listening to now, is about the 2-second blip in the Motown Philly video from Boys to Men in 1991. In the video, there's a 2-second blip of an artist named Sudden Impact, who was never heard from again. And Dave Holmes, who was a VJ from MTV, spends 10 episodes uncovering the story of like whatever happened to that band that had the was in the biggest video of the decade,
Yeah.
and then like was never heard of. Like they never released music there, and so it's an interesting It's not nerdy. It's super like low, cool, and it's like it's stories about the industry and stories about like what happens, and some of it is the fault of the machines of corporations, and some of it is like the artists. Artists are often really young, and so their lives are, artists are 17 years old, and like think about the things we all did at 17, right? So it's fascinating, and you should listen all the way through, because when you get to the punchline in the middle, when they tell you about sudden impact, the next 5 episodes are just as interesting.
Right. Is that even a one-hit wonder? Does that classify as a one-hit wonder?
I don't think so. And Winds of Change is similar. It's about the song, the Scorpion song, Winds of Change, and it's about how that song came to be in the era of Cold War, Eastern Europe. It's a different kind of thing, and it is also fascinating.
Yeah. Good. Sounds really fun. So if you want to check out those, excuse me, the links are in the chat. Go ahead and check that out, but wait until we're done. So there's a question from the audience that says, so it's great to have passion about the job, but sometimes it could go away. And the question is, how do you refine, I like this question, how do you refine that passion? And maybe does it not go away, or maybe it's just hidden? I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know the answer to your question, but definitely, we all wake up on days, weeks, and months where it's hard, right? And I think I'm probably lucky enough where I have fewer days, because on any given day, even if I have a rough day, I go see a show, or like a part of my job is to listen to music, watch videos on YouTube, and go to shows. But it's not an easy industry. It's not, people are complicated. And so there are absolutely times where I lose my way as well. And I think for me, I'd go back to, I really do genuinely go back to what are the parts of this that I love, right? And so sometimes I dig into what would actually make this fun for me, right? And so sometimes I'll just focus on a change problem, right? Like what would be something that, because there's so much noise and I feel the weight of the world, what's something that I can actually accomplish that would matter to the company or to an artist, or right, whether it's an idea around a song project, or whether it's or an album, or whether it's how do I make people's lives in the company a little bit better so we can all be a little happier? And sometimes I drill into a thing. Mm-hmm. Usually when you achieve something, you feel a little bit better, a little bit.
Absolutely.
Or I take vacation. Work-life balance, or my family and I, we go away and you take some time off, and you always come back feeling great.
And there is a lot too that, being other-centered, making a difference for others when you're feeling like you're not really having a good day or a good period of time, and that reaching out and other-centered is really makes a big difference. So we've got another question. It's not my question. I didn't write this. So what does an older guy, that's the question, how does an older guy deal with such constant change and still stay relevant? Yeah, we've been kind of talking about that.
Well, I'm going to assume that the older guy thing wasn't directed at me. It was someone on the call who's an older person who's asking, how would they do this?
I like that. We'll go with that.
So for me, I'm still passionate about learning every single day. I commute into the city, and I use every single moment that I have to take in information. I read, I listen to podcasts, I read books. I have piles of business books and industry books. And so I'm a voracious reader, and that helps me to stay up. And then honestly, the other thing that I do is I just believe that all the people that I surround myself with, all of the people that I work with are smarter than I am, and they teach me things every single day. And whether it's I spend time with, Julie Greenwald, the woman that runs the company, taught me a long time ago that you should spend far more time with the newest people in the company than the senior people in the company. Our fans are mostly music leans young, and so the youngest people in our company are the people that are closest to the people that we're trying to get to. And so they teach me why I should care about Snapchat or NFTs or, snap goggle like sunglasses, right? Just they teach me about the things that are relevant because I don't live in that world anymore. I'm a person that goes home to my family and does other things.
Yeah, I just want to say you're listening to and watching Lion Legends with Paul J. Sinclair, graduate class of 1997. And we may want to end this, and I want to thank you for. We're going to continue with questions, but I just want to end this part of the evening and say thank you, Paul, for great conversation, and thank you for watching and listening.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, and Santo, thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. So let's go back to some questions. So this one's about Fearless. And the question says, I asked my fraternity brother regarding making that leap from software sales to something else that truly lights a fire as kind of a second act in a person's career. What can you provide as guidance to making that leap? And they also wanted to offer their congratulations for all your success.
Thank you for joining to my fraternity brother. People ask me a lot how they transition into the music industry. It's obviously an interesting industry for a lot of people. I think that it's not easy. You have to find a way to find a role that uses your skills, and you may need to hone. Like I tell people, someone might say, I've experience in digital marketing, but in a traditional brand sense or something. How do I apply that to the music industry? And I might give them a list of here's the sorts of tools that we use that are somewhat unique to the music industry, whether it's analytics tools or or certifications with YouTube, right? Just like things that matter on a resume. I said, you're going to have to spend extra time doing these things to figure out how to get your way in. And then you're going to have to convince the right person. You have to find the right person who's open to someone transitioning. And if you find the right person, that's the person you want to work for. You want to, if you have to force your way in, they're the wrong person, right? You want someone who says, I actually value the fact that you're coming from outside and you're going to bring a fresh new perspective. But it's definitely not easy. I mean, it's a very hard. I think most entertainment in general is hard to move into from another area. But at Atlantic, we hire people who I meet all the time who say, oh, I did this, and it has nothing to do with music or entertainment. So people figure it out. You have to be fearless. But again, you also have to do the work. You have to do extra work.
Absolutely. These are really thoughtful questions. I'm really excited about these questions. Next one is, you said music should be part of everyday life, and I completely agree, but do you ever feel like we have access to music too easily now? I know a lot of people feel they shouldn't have to pay for music, that it should just be available to them because it's so easy to access. It's really interesting.
Yeah, so this is actually something we talk about reasonably often, right? It's our core business.
Yeah.
I think I try not to worry about what, a lot of people think a lot of things should be everything, right? A lot of people think that everything in the world should be free. A lot of people think that everything should be easy. A lot of people think they should be able to retire at fill in the blank age, not at retirement age. So I think the part about people expect and feel entitled to access to whatever they want, artists, producers, songwriters, right? Like all of those people work. I mean, if you're any of those things, you work amazingly hard. Sometimes you toil for a decade, right? Like we're working with a brand new artist, Gail, who has this giant pop song, and everyone thinks she's like exploded out of nowhere. And she's young. She's like 17, and she spent like the last 6 years since she was like 13 years old, walking into bars in Nashville with a guitar on her back as a tiny little kid, trying to get anyone to let her play. She deserves to be paid for everything that she does, right? The recorded music side of it, the touring side of it, right? All of it, because she does it nonstop. So it shouldn't be free. And if people feel that way, it shouldn't be free. She deserves to be compensated in the same way that You should be compensated for teaching. Accountants should be compensated for doing accounting and doing my taxes, right? Like
Yeah.
so anyway, it shouldn't be free.
Yeah.
It should just be a part of our lives, right? And
Yeah.
you should be willing to pay for it.
I've growing up, with a dad who was a musician and had wedding bands and bands for parties. It's the same thing. It's like he almost felt guilty sometimes about charging him like that. This is your job. You deserve, people deserve to be paid. You're right. I think we think of it because it's entertainment for us, but it's not entertainment. It is entertaining for them, but it's their work. It's their livelihood. Same with
And
every artist.
and occasionally some artists say, "Oh, I'm giving this away for." Cool, that's your right too. It's your toil, right? You have the right to
Exactly.
decide what to do with your art. Um,
Yep.
and yeah.
This next one is really interesting. I don't think we really did cover this. They were concerned that they may have it's already been covered, but they said, how did you have to pivot during the last 2 years during the pandemic? Was it difficult to come up with new ideas and revenue streams when shows and touring weren't really an option? That's really good.
I mean, it was a frustrating and for a million reasons, it was a frustrating and scary time. But just specifically to my job, it was a frustrating and scary time. Probably like
Yeah.
almost everyone on the call. Um, touring is probably the easiest area to talk about. So we have a touring department, and so all of those people very quickly, right, got in rooms and started brainstorming and thinking about, right, and they very quickly learned everything what there was to ever know about live streaming. They met with every live streaming platform, right? And it wasn't to keep themselves in business. It was so that they could help artists reach their fans, right? We're all going to be on lockdown. How do artists perform? And some of it was about artists wanted to reach their fans during this horrible time, right? Like we need music in times of like
Absolutely.
right? But also, we needed to develop artists. Like the best artist development for most artists is getting out on the road and touching fans and right and meeting fans where they are. And like live shows or if you haven't been to a live show in a while, like especially for us adults, like go do yourself a favor and go to a small live show. Go to a little club and hang out and see some band you've never heard of. And so they pivoted into what is every idea we can think of, right? Creating more content, creating tiny little pieces of content, right? For TikTok and, all the short form content, all the way through to, we did an amazing show with 21 Pilots, like a full length concert that felt like a concert at at Madison Square Garden. So, and that was probably, the easiest, most obvious answer is like, we really had to rethink what we do around touring, but we had to rethink our whole business. And we, and honestly, we're still rethinking it because none of us know how this will end, if it'll end, and what life will be like on the other side of it.
Yeah, I mean, we used to throw around the word agility in business or marketing. It's like this has never been more clear how much we need to be agile. And those companies that do it and the industries that do it will survive, will sustain, but it's not a given.
The beauty of music is that most artists actually react. Again, artists are complicated people by nature, right? Because you're often terrorized by your own creative genius. But
Right.
most artists actually just get it. They're change agents. They're like, I'm going to figure out how to get to the people that want to hear my music, and so we enable them to do the thing they do, not the other way around.
Yeah, yeah. So that's we got one more question, and I like this one because I think it's a nice way to end. Who should we be looking out for? Because some of the two folks have asked about, you talk about Bryn Elliott. Are there other artists that that are your favorites or that are coming up that we should look out for?
Sure. I mean, I mentioned Gail already. I love Gail. She's a super cool. She has a song that's exploding online and everywhere.
Mhm.
When I first saw a show, I thought she was a pop artist. When I first saw her, I realized she's like this super cool, like punk rock,
Yeah.
little punk rocker, right? Like I felt
Okay.
like I was seeing like a poppy version of like Joan Jett. It's super cool. And so
Nice.
Gail, Gayle, is worth checking out. I'm excited. There's a cool artist named Callie, Kali. There's an artist in that we signed with our South African territory named CKAY. Like there's so much amazing music. And for I won't say finally, but for like it's been a while since world music has penetrated the US, and we're getting a lot more music from around the world, not just from Europe, right? But from like
Right.
Africa and Asia. And I think that's really cool because not only are we seeing cultures from around the world, but it's also young people don't know boundaries in the same way that like I think we grew up without the internet. And so they're incorporating music from all over the world into their American sound. So like both are happening, and just like I think that's really cool.
It, yeah, I mean, we talk about diversity and inclusion, and the, the music is such a great way for us to connect and to learn about other folks, other styles, and to feel alive with their music too. It's awesome. Yeah, a few people have seen Gail in the chat, and they've said she's really great. Somebody saw her in Nashville. Somebody else saw her in Jimmy Fallon and
Yep.
said it was a really great performance.
That was I think her first television performance.
Was it? Cool. So, Paul, what can we say? This has been a great hour and some minutes just to kind of reconnect. For me, it's been a kick. It's been fun. I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of who you are. I'm proud of what you've accomplished, but mostly the person that you are. And hopefully, those who have been listening and watching will get excited, get passionate about whatever it is that you do. And I know Paul's going to be willing to stay around for a little bit and chat with his buddies and friends or anybody else who wants to say hello. So thank you so much for listening and watching Lion Legend today with our guest, Paul J. Sinclair. Have a great day.
Thank you, Santo. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we're going to stop recording and just chat with anybody who wants to chat. Is that, we're good, Brian, for that?